Thank you for chatting to us this morning. Firstly, highlight that conflict for us.
Now, firstly, I never lambasted Mmusi at all. I never lambasted anybody. I only said it was a serious dilemma because the only recourse, if you have a complaint against somebody under the Executive Ethics Act, the only recourse is to the public protector. And if the public protector is compromised, you have a terrible choice between not reporting an alleged breach of the Executive Ethics Act or taking it to a compromised public protector. I said my choice would have been not to take it to a compromised public protector, having personally been the foreperson in such a referral before, but I respected Mmusi's decision, and I was certainly not the leader of the DA, and the DA had taken another decision. That's what I said. I didn't lambast anybody. I didn't even criticize anybody. Okay. I just merely said it was a dilemma.
Do you think the decision by Mmusi Maimane has left room for division within the party, some of those agreeing with his decision, some of those obviously not agreeing with his decision?
No, I think that all of these decisions are very difficult. You know, when you have a compromised state, when you have a captured state, and we believe that the public protector has been captured by a faction of the ANC, which is very, very unfortunate because the public protector should do her job without fear or favour. What is an opposition party to do when there is a seemingly legitimate complaint under the Executive Ethics Act, and that is your only recourse? So it's a terrible dilemma for the party. Either you let an alleged breach of the Executive Ethics Act go by, or you take it to a compromised public protector. And this is one of the things that really shows up the problem of having a captured state.
Do you think that the possible outcome, some people are speculating, saying that the move by the DA to approach the public protector and have Ramaphosa investigated could possibly lead to the end of his presidency, and not my words, but leave us with a less desirable candidate for the president of the country? Do you think that's a legitimate reason to criticize the decision by Maimane?
No, it's not a legitimate reason to criticize the decision by Mmusi Maimane. The bottom line is this. If there is an alleged breach of the Executive Ethics Act, the opposition has a role and a duty to take it up. That is their function. The internal battle in the ANC is the ANC's issue. And we certainly cannot have institutions of state being aligned with one faction or the other faction in the ANC. That is exactly the problem with state capture. And you cannot have an opposition that has to take its cue from the state of capture of various institutions. They have to take decisions on their own. But it is a terrible dilemma if you have such a compromised public protector and you have a complaint that only she can adjudicate. What do you do? And I discussed that dilemma and said that it was quite legitimate to fall down on either side of that argument. That is what I discussed. Things are not cut and dried or black and white in our politics. They are complex moral dilemmas, and that is what we need to understand.
So supporters of the DA might question which side the DA is now taking, the side of the Ramaphosa, essentially, if you break it down very simplistically, or the public protector. How does the DA get out of this dilemma? The bottom line is this. It's not for the DA to take a side in the faction fighting of the ANC. The faction fighting of the ANC is the core problem for South Africa because it has spilt out into the capture of state institutions. That doesn't mean to say that the DA must stop doing its job. The minute you ask the question, is the DA on the public protector's side or on Ramaphosa's side, you're asking completely the wrong question, which reflects the dilemma South Africa is in. We have to be on the Constitution's side. And ideally, the public protector should be protecting the Constitution too, but she isn't doing that. So what does it leave a party like the DA that wants to protect the Constitution, and indeed that has to protect the Constitution if it suspects there is a possible violation of the Executive Ethics Act by the President? That is the dilemma. And to ask whose side are you on, the public protectors or the President, actually reflects the core problem in South Africa.
Division seems to be a consistent issue South Africans are dealing with, whether on a political sphere or social. You've often been accused, because of your tweets, of being a divisive element, both within the DA and in South African society. Do you regret posting about victimhood, hierarchies, black and white privilege?
I think the important thing is to understand that free speech and open debate is absolutely critical. And it is the most basic of values in a liberal democracy, which we have a liberal constitution, except perhaps for the right to life itself. So vigorous debate involves saying things that aren't popular. Almost every progress in human history has involved people who have said things that aren't popular, especially when vested interests are challenged. And so I will continue challenging vested interests, and especially those that undermine the building of a common nationhood and the building of an inclusive economy, which we need. And this notion of turning minorities into the enemy in South Africa is destroying our possibility of building a common nationhood, and all of the policies that go with it, the National Democratic Revolution, neo-Marxism, are all destroying the possibility of building an inclusive economy. And I will speak up about these things all the time and wherever I have to, using all the platforms that I have to, because that is what we fought for freedom to do. There's nothing divisive about joining the debate.
You've spoken in the past about the importance of deploying the army to the Western Cape. Do you think that Bheki Cele is doing that now for political leverage? What's your opinion on the timing of this move?
Well, my opinion on the timing of this move is that the ANC thought that by trying to make the province ungovernable while I was the Premier, while trying to starve the Western Cape of resources to the greatest extent that they could, by trying to make it appear that we couldn't deliver because the national government was putting stumbling blocks in our way at every turn, they thought that by doing that they could win back support for the ANC in the Western Cape. Of course, they totally failed to do that because the ANC got the worst possible election result they've ever got through that strategy. They fell under 30% for the very first time, down to 28-point-something%. And they realized that the voters saw through their strategy to make the Western Cape ungovernable. And so on that very basis, they've decided that that strategy has failed, and it's about time that they started looking at another strategy, and that is why they have now sent in the troops that I was asking for at least 5 years before that.
Last question. You talk about the ANC's losses at the polls. What do you think has been the reason for the DA's losses at the polls this year?
Well, you will see very clearly where we lost votes. In the Western Cape, we lost votes to the Freedom Front Plus, that now has their first seat in the provincial parliament. We lost votes to the ACDP, and the ANC lost some votes to the economic freedom fighters. In the rest of the country, very much the same pattern. We also lost some votes, obviously, to the Good Party, especially in the Western Cape. They also got their first seat in the parliament. But nationally, we lost our core constituencies, and that is why we went down a couple of percentage points.
Right, thank you very much for your time. That was former DA leader Helen Zille speaking to us about a range of issues.